What's up, people, and welcome to another episode of Developer Habits. My name is Ketmar. I'm a developer from Estonia, and my goal is to talk about topics for developers like growth mindset, developer lifestyle, and technical tutorials. And in today's video, we are going to talk about what it means to be a solo developer in a mobile application project. And we have Pavel here with me, who is a developer in Ampler Bikes. Now, if you don't know what Ampler Bikes is, then it's an Estonian startup, I guess we can say that, that produces high-quality electric bikes that, well, I have tested one and I just smiled because they look like normal bikes, but they are electric bikes with a range of about 70 kilometers, which is like a long distance. Yeah. But I guess I will let you talk about a bit more about the company and how you got there. And yeah, this is, I guess, how we can get started. Can you maybe introduce yourself, talk about your background, and how you ended up in Ampler Bikes?
Well, as was already mentioned, my name is Pavel, and well, how I ended up in Ampler Bikes was a complete accident almost. I was working in Tallinn for about 8 years, and I wasn't specifically looking for a new job, but like a lot of people who worked with me at the company started leaving. And like finding new jobs, and one of the guys, like at some point he already left the company, he just sends me a link to this application, job application from Ampler Bikes. And at this point I knew absolutely nothing about Ampler Bikes. In fact, I actually didn't even know that such a thing as an electric bike exists. I knew there are like scooters, I knew there are cars. And the funny thing is, my friend sends this link literally one day after we watched this Estonian movie Unicorn, which plot of this movie is literally that, like about a startup doing the self-riding electric bike. And I look at this like description, I don't read it fully, I don't know anything about the company, and I think that this is like a joke, like he's just like trolling me. Like, look at this. It's like literally next day after we saw the movie, and I laughed. I even like sent him like, okay, very funny, yeah, I'm going to work there now, a startup that does electric bikes, just like we saw. And he's like, no, this is like serious, like check it out, it's a very well-known company, they have this funder beam campaigns already, multiple, a lot of people like investing money in them, they're like already existing for over 5 years. And I started checking out, and yeah, it's it was real, it is real, it's super impressive. I checked all these funder beam campaigns. So like the last campaign raised over 2 million euros, something like that, like pretty fast.
I can say that I'm one of the investors actually.
Yeah, that's very cool. And yeah, I went to, well, just still because I was not like super interested in leaving my company at the time, I still went for the interview, and I met like several people. It was like a pretty long process. I met like a designer first, who is also like a product owner, I guess, for the native applications. I met the CEO and one of the co-founders, Ardo, and yeah, it was like interesting process, like how they described what they want, why they want. I was like really surprised that pretty small company that does electric bikes want to hire like in-house native app developer just to do the app from the scratch. That was like I actually when I went at first, I wasn't even sure it's from the scratch because I knew they have some sort of app. But yeah, this app was actually done, and it's still now in production by a third-party company, and it was like more generic solution. So like Ampler had and has little to say about what's done there. It's like because it's used by several other customers of this third-party company, they just slightly change something like logo and colors. Otherwise, it's the same app. You can see it for some other like devices, bikes and whatever. So Ampler wanted like their own vision, their own app done like from scratch, and that was that.
So when you were going through the interview process and everything, I know that you are quite an experienced developer already, working in Tallink, which is one of the biggest companies in Estonia. What was it that Ampler Bikes was looking for when hiring you?
Well, their main like thing during the hiring process, at least it was with me, and I think it's now just like a standard for hiring, is that first of all, I would fit as a person in their team because, well, currently Ambler Bikes is like 65 people, and this is like people in Germany and Estonia, so it's a pretty small company, and the software team is tiny. So they're mostly looking, first of all, if I fit as a person. And then it's just like, otherwise, just the professional side, they gave me some test exercise, whatever that I have to do. I did that, and that was that. What I liked is, as I mentioned, I wasn't like super interested even when I learned about Antwerp bikes because I was doing fine. I felt fine in my company. So it's like when they gave me actually the test exercise, they told me like to make an application for, let's say, like I could choose like Android or iOS, and I said I'm going to do iOS native application. And I said, can I use like any technologies whatsoever to do the test exercise? Because usually some people provide very strict, like use this or this, use Spring or whatever if you're doing backend, or use, I don't know, React, native React.js, whatever. They say like, do whatever. And this was exactly when I was during this hiring process, exactly when the final version of SwiftUI framework came out from Apple. It was like completely like revolutionary thing for the native iOS development. They never had this declarative approach to do anything, and this is like first-party framework that allow to program like in declarative fashion, like similar to React, I guess, but writing native code in Swift. And it's like I was mind blown because I really was not a fan of this previous like UI kit. I mean, it's a very powerful framework, but to use it in a sane fashion, you probably had to use some third-party libraries like, I don't know, Rix, Swift or something like that, and something else on top of that. But with this, it was really clean, really easy to write all the UIs, and looked cool. So I decided, okay, I have this test exercise, I'm going to do it in that. I've never touched it before. I just like literally haven't at this point written a single line of code in SwiftUI.
So it was a challenge for you also,
Yeah.
something new to try out.
And that's why I actually this is probably for me was the most interesting test exercise I've ever done, because I could just choose whatever and actually in the process try something that was interesting to me. And I did that, and yeah, they were satisfied with that. So more than that, I then, like, they said, okay, we're going to hire you, and I was already like coming to the company, I guess, and I said like, can I actually use SwiftUI to write the project? And they said sure. And I said like, do you know the like limitations? For example, it only supports like iOS 13 plus, so it doesn't support any other versions of the iPhone OS. And they were like, yeah, fine, we'll like analyze how many people are actually using currently from their user base, like iOS 13. And it was already at the beginning, like at the end of the last year, at the beginning of, release of iOS 13, already a lot of people using it. So we went with it.
I guess this is also one of the questions that I wanted to go into, like planning for the project, actually, like both the research for the users, but also the technical sides. Can you maybe talk about, firstly, who were the people participating in the project? As I understand, you were the only developer doing both the mobile application side, but also backend. But I assume there were also like designers, project managers, and so on.
When I just came in, even during one of the interview, there was like this designer who I talked to, and the designer he already showed me all the plans for the application, because they did all this research. Well, I guess mostly he, like one person, did this research. Like he talked to current customers, he just took a look at the problems that people were having with the current version of the application, and he had like all this roadmap with some designs already like at hand. So there was like a vision even before I came, just design wise, like UI UX wise, like flow wise, what they want. So they even knew already what is going to be in the first release. So basically, there are like a lot of ideas to add later on, but there was like a strict already thing decided for the first version of this new app, like what we are going to do there. Well, actually, it's in the process changed slightly, which, well, it's good and bad. Basically, it increased the scope a lot, but I
As
think
always.
but I think that the features that we edit are actually super cool. So maybe it's worth it.
Maybe we can talk about the features. Like, what were the main features that the new application brought? And I mean, why should an electric bike have a mobile application?
Well, how Ampler puts it, it's like a window into the bike, the application. That's the slogan. So yeah, well, first of all, it's just like a convenient way to adjust parameters on the bike. Currently, the bike, it's an electric bike, but it has like 3 modes. So one mode is you can turn it in a regular bike. You just disable all the electric assists, and then you can like play with 2 additional modes, which are like helping you more or helping you less. And each of these modes can also be a little bit adjusted, like so like I don't know, like just basically the level of motor help for you. And these things you can do through the app. For example, just switching between the modes you can do even without the application, but it's not very convenient. It's like holding a button. There is a physical button on the bike. You have to hold it for some time and whatever, and you don't actually see immediately what mode it is, because there is no display whatsoever on the bicycle, except there is a light ring on the button, but it shows like a battery level or something. Like it goes from green to gradually to red. So the app is just a more visually convenient way to switch modes, but then to actually precisely to configure this both of the modes, you can do only through the app. You basically can literally select at what speed the bike will stop assisting you. Like you say, like at 10 kilometers per hour, stop assisting. So basically you can like reach some speed really fast, but after that you are just pedaling on your own. So these things you can do from app. This is like the core features. They were already in the current app, but we went further. Like we had like even a design sprint where we were like thinking about like brainstorming. This is the happened already when I was on board. So that's why after this design sprint we actually added some features which were not originally planned. We decided to do like add the gamification, like fun factor. So we actually added like achievements based on whatever like you rode distance or what assist mode you use or didn't use. There's an achievement like driving for 5 days without the electric assistance.
To gamify the whole experience.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
And then we added statistics, like it shows like when you rode, how long you rode, stuff like that. So basically the app is doing something similar that the Fitbit app does. So it's like a lot of fun. It's not just something you can do with the bike, but it like adds to the value of the bike. So like we wanted people to be interested in using the app, just not because it's a necessity, but because it's fun to use. And now I think it's there.
It's really cool because like I think of a bike as a way of transportation, but if you have all those, especially this gamification built inside the mobile application, it creates a whole new experience for riding the bike. Maybe like Pokemon Go, you know, people just go outside for the sake of unlocking achievements and new Pokemons.
We had some during brainstorming crazy ideas which didn't end up in the application, but something like Tinder for bicyclists built into the application, so you can actually find like a bicycling mate or something like that. I mean, it's not there, but it was like one of the fun ideas. I actually like this idea a lot, but yeah, it's not there. It's not going to be in the application.
This is actually an interesting topic I'd like to talk about. Like when building a new product or new feature, you could do, especially I dare to say product managers like to go crazy, like, hey, can we build in this, can we build that, and so on. And at least based on my experience, it's usually the developers that have to be like, hey, we have to be focused, we have to build, we have to think how long something takes to build. Like the focus is the key word. How do you see it was in that project?
Well, that's also one of the reasons I actually went to work to Ampler, because in Tallink we had the very strict deadlines, and it was very stressful sometimes because people who wanted some features, they couldn't, like they didn't believe the estimations of the developers or something like that. They couldn't believe something visually simple. that simple visually takes so long to develop and whatever. So there's all the time pressure, like when is it ready? Let's do it. In Ampler, this is one of the things I ask, like, what is the deadline of the app? And basically, they had a soft deadline. They had some month, but they said it's like soft deadline. I mean, we are not actually targeting it. We are not going to like to work, I don't know, 12 hours a day to reach this. So basically, in Ampler, I'm really fine with this adding anything new, because I know we can actually push the release date or whatever. So like the only thing I can say, like, this probably will be technically difficult. It might take me unknown amount of time or like big amount of time. And I say, if this is okay, let's do it. Because most of the ideas I like. I mean, I look at that's why like I like doing actually things like client-facing things, because I see them as a user itself. So, and I try to do products which are myself I would use, and so I can like see how fun or not fun it is to use and what features I would personally like. So I also like pitch some ideas. So like everyone adds something to the project, including myself, just like the design-wise and whatever.
Do you have the bike yourself?
Yes, every employee of Ampler gets a bike.
Okay, so you can test out the features yourself?
Well, yeah, or just not test the features. I mean, it's just like the thing. This is a cool thing about working in Ampler. You go to work in any position, you're not involved in the app, you will get a bike of your choosing. Yeah, I actually now have like 2 bikes, because my girlfriend also works in Ampler, and she has a car, she's driving the car mostly, so I'm also driving her bike. So I'm using two different models of the bike.
Unlocking the achievements in the application.
Yeah.
But we really softly went into the topic of estimating and giving estimations. If you are a solo developer, how I see it, sometimes you want to discuss ideas and how long something may take. If you have different architectures or something to decide between, then you can discuss with other developers. How was it in that project? And especially like when you were asked for estimations, did you, you are quite experienced, you probably can give some estimations yourself, but how much were other people, other developers involved?
They weren't. Like right now, the state is like that. We have Android and iOS application. Both of them are native. So 2 separate people are doing them. Like one of them is me, and the Android is done by a different person. Then we have web developers, and that's about it. So basically, in estimations or anything code related, no one else is involved. We tried doing code reviews between like Android developer and me, and this was just like too time consuming, because it's like too big of a focus switch or something, like, because it's like completely different language, although it's similar. Like he uses Kotlin, I'm using Swift, they're very similar. I actually, in Tallink, I was a solo developer for both of the native apps. I was simultaneously doing Android and iOS app in native languages, not like hybrid. So actually, I could like technically do that, but still it would take so much time to review the code. So for now, we stopped doing that. So the estimations, yeah, my estimations in this project were super rough because SwiftUI, right? I started using the new framework, which was not only new to me, it was new to the world. Even now, if you want to find something very specific, it's hard, like on the internet, because not a lot of, almost no one uses it on production. Or whoever uses it in production, it's like for pet projects. It's not like real companies like project. So they're very small, and there is like very little information. Like there are literally maybe 3 or 4 people on the whole internet who are doing something like really interesting, writing something really interesting about SwiftUI, because there are more resources, but other resources are like very generic, and you can probably get this information, I don't know, from Apple Docs or whatever. They just like writing in a different way about that. But there are like literally 3 or 4 guys who are doing something like very interesting, very insightful with SwiftUI right now, because it's still such a new framework. Not only that, it's already known beforehand that because it's new, it's missing a lot of features. It's actually missing a lot of core features which were in the previous framework UIKit, and now they're just not there. And the way to add them is, I don't know, like some crazy hacky ways using SwiftUI, or actually you can fall back to UIKit because there is this sort of integration between the UIKit, the old framework, and SwiftUI. So basically, theoretically, you can write anything in UIKit and then wrap it in SwiftUI and sort of use it in SwiftUI. But there are also downsides to that. Even if you can do that, there is still something that might work differently from if you just wrote everything in UIKit. So because of that, estimations were like all over the place. I tried doing them. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes like the easiest of features would take me like 5 times longer than I estimated, because I just didn't expect that it's going to be that difficult or nigh on impossible to do in SwiftUI. And yeah, that's hard. Well, of course, it's also hard because I'm like one developer. I mean, in a team, it's much easier to have a balanced estimate because everyone has different opinion, different skill set maybe. So like you usually estimate and then you take an average or something. But here, like the only estimation is mine. And the project is not huge, but it's not tiny. It actually has a lot of aspects to it. Yeah, for example, in the beginning, you already said that that I was doing backend as well for the application. In the beginning, I was not supposed to do the backend. So at some point, like months into the project, I started doing backend out of the blue. And it is fun for me, but it also took more time than it should have, I guess, it could have, because I have a backend experience before, but I haven't done it in a while. And also I choose the technologies which I didn't touch before. I mean, I just knew that they're easy to learn, easy to use, and I started using them, but I never used them before. So it's like everything I've pretty much done in Ampler was like learning on the go, just technology specific things I had to learn on the go. I could use, of course, my knowledge from everything else I used, but still, these were new things to me.
This is actually an interesting topic that you touched. Like, how did you choose those technologies? And especially as you were developing this project by yourself, you yourself had to choose those technologies. So, what were some of the things you looked at or considered when choosing the tech stack?
Well, with SwiftUI, I didn't look at anything very much. I was super interested in using it in production. I did, of course, tell immediately everyone like involved in this project somehow that what are the downsides, and I said we can go. On the very first interviews, Ampler was actually even considering having one developer doing both of the apps. And at that point, I even said, like, are you sure you want to do it native? Like 2 different apps, especially by one person, is going to take a lot of time. Like, don't you want to use some like hybrid framework like React Native or like Flutter? And they already knew like what are these things, and they say like, no, we would want to have like the best of the best. I mean, the native is still like, if you want like super something good, still native is the way to go. I mean, they're willing to pay for it, so they went for it. And so I chose SwiftUI just because I saw a lot of potential. Like even though now it's a little bit raw, it's missing a lot of features. It's literally like the future of native development for us. It's like already a fact. Like just now there was this WWDC 2020, and Apple showed the SwiftUI 2.0, and it's already like a huge leap from the first version. So they added all these missing features that I like struggled without. Now they're there. Not only that, they also introduced a whole new feature. I think it's like widgets. Now they have widgets. Like Android had them forever. iOS had it in some form, but now it's like full support for widgets, and widgets are only going to be doable in SwiftUI. Like before that point, you could still do anything either in SwiftUI or UI kit. Now they have something that's only doable in SwiftUI. I mean, they're clearly stating that we are going this way. I mean, in a few years, this is going to be de facto framework for developing a native iOS application. So for me, it was a no-brainer to use that. As for backend, I talked to some people. I talked to people working in different companies because there are not that many people to talk to in my company. And I chose like this Firebase or Google Firebase services because they have like pretty much everything there. They have like a database. You can have this functions for there, which is like a backend, simplified backend, easy to deploy. And yeah, they have authentication, which we're using anyway. So it's basically all these pieces are really easy to integrate on backend together, like authenticating a user, like having some data in database, and then writing backend. Well, I'm now writing it in Node.js. So yeah, like inside the company, it's a little bit hard to consult with anyone on these low level topics.
So basically, choosing Swift was based on your experience and the need to explore new things. And as we spoke, probably Swift will be the future of Apple or iOS development.
Well, SwiftUI, yeah. I mean, Swift itself is just a language that existed for a while. Now there is like Swift version 5 already, but SwiftUI is the name of the like framework that like basically renders views.
Okay.
So yeah, I chose it because I had interest in it and I knew it was a future for native stuff. And I'm really interested in doing native development versus this like hybrid type of development. I did try personally React Native, a little bit of Flutter. React Native I didn't like for one simple reason: it's JavaScript. Well, you can use I guess TypeScript, but it's an upgrade over JavaScript. Anything is, but it's still not as cool as using like Swift programming language or something. I would potentially be interested in working in a project using Flutter or React Native. I'm really flexible, but if I have my choice, I would go with how I went.
And regarding backend, you just spoke to people who know that stuff and chose based on that.
Yeah, I spoke to people who use this, for example, Firebase for already years, I guess, a couple of years at least. I found multiple people, and they just said like describe to me like what could be the downsides, what are the plus sides, and whatever. And then I decided to try it. And so I had like a sort of prototype phase as well. And I also said in company, I'm going to just try it. I mean, we're not necessarily going to use it. I'm going to spend some time prototyping it and seeing is it actually comfortable for me to use and continue using, scaling it. And it worked out fine. We're still using it. But the good thing is that like this backend, I guess we could easily even migrate anywhere. I mean, it's not a problem. We are not like super fixed to it.
What I picked up when you were talking is that you were constantly communicating with, I guess, the designers and product managers. And do I understand correctly that especially when you are a solo developer exploring something new, like SwiftUI was, you have to be completely honest and transparent, especially when you see that something is going to take more time or something?
Yeah, that is super important. I guess a lot of people, like a lot of developers, are trying to somehow like hide like behind something, like not actually telling what is the problem for a delay or something taking a lot of time. I learned this mistake a long time ago, like not to do that. So now I like upfront, even when I like have just a gut feeling that something might be a problem, I say it. When I actually having a problem, I'm saying that yes, it took me this long because this was super unexpected. I basically had to research, I had to try, and I failed like 3 times trying this in SwiftUI, for example, and then it didn't work according to UI specs. So yeah, so that's why it took so long. I mean, the transparency is the most important thing, and it's like as soon as you have any sort of problem, it's better to tell it to other people, like whoever, everyone, a team, so they know. So it's not like a surprise later on. Like if you feel you're failing any deadline, tell it like before, not 3 days before the deadline. It's like it's not going to be good for you.
This is something I want to vouch for that idea, because being transparent, even if you screw up, then others who are also related to that project can take over and can make their plans according to those mistakes. But we also touched the topic of quality a bit, like code reviews and everything. As a solo developer, it can be hard to like always put effort also into the quality. how did you approach that part?
Well, I came to Ampere from the background of writing a lot of unit tests, writing a lot of end-to-end tests, UI tests. We used to do this a lot in Tallinn. So this is a part of my development, but right now, I guess I still did that. I wrote like some tests, like for example, for backend, I wrote a lot of tests because it's important and it's going to be used by a lot of people, and it's going to be used by two different client applications. But for the actual iOS project, there are much less tests right now, which is bad. I don't know. There is no real excuse for that, I guess, except for time. As I said, like I was already failing time-wise a lot of things because of SwiftUI. So I wrote some tests, but very little. And yeah, it's like no one, I guess, should follow this approach, like writing little tests, because tests like literally save your ass all the time. It's like it saves you when you're refactoring the code. It saves you like whenever something changes. Like at least write, I don't know, like end-to-end tests, because they test the whole flow with real integration. So you'll see maybe some not the client side fails, but backend, or their backend change something without telling you, especially if it's different people doing the backend and front end. Yeah, so there is that. Otherwise, even like this is the problem of being a solo developer. Even if you do write tests and you do your own tests, just like a user, just clicking around, it's not very good, because basically you have like a very like narrow vision, like tunnel vision. You're like writing a test for the feature you wrote yourself, create yourself. So it's really possible that even if you write all these tests, they're going to be like false positives, because unless you are doing like test-driven development and you write a test first, you actually writing a test for what you already wrote logic for. So you can like write a faulty logic for the test as well, and this happens.
Which can be really dangerous, right?
Yeah, it's super dangerous, and it happened to me quite a few times. So it's very good either to have code reviews or to actually have some other developer maybe writing a test. Well, actually, code reviews, I guess, is fine.
But regarding like architectural decisions, did you at some points also like hesitate? I don't know, is that the correct way to go, or are those the technologies I should be choosing? How did you approach that part?
Well, for iOS client side, yeah, it was a little bit of a struggle, because the architecture I was used to, like which I used before in the iOS native project, was something I couldn't like use the same way because of SwiftUI, because SwiftUI completely changed like basically everything, like the way you write application. Like before, the de facto approach to writing iOS application, like de facto by Apple, like sort of advertised by Apple, was like model view controller. But now it's like, I don't know, more like model view controller or something like that. Or MVVM, model view model. So because of that, I wasn't sure like what is the best way to have this architecture. And actually, initially, the architecture I started like doing something. I just started like doing something by reading guides and whatever official guides, whatever I could, and the architecture I had. In the end, I saw that it's not very scalable. So I actually at some point, and it was like already month at least maybe even more, I found a better way to do this architecture. Once again, it's like it was documented by one of these active SwiftUI people on the internet. There's a guy who like described like in words really well his idea for architecture in SwiftUI, and I talked to this guy. He also had like a demo project for this architecture, and I checked it out, and I had to change some things, but still like I decided to follow that, and now it's there. I basically changed the initial architecture for a new one, and now it's there. It's working more or less fine.
The whole topic of choosing Swift UI and exploring the unknown is, I mean, we could do another video about that. It's really interesting.
Well, it is super, I guess, bleeding edge or something. It's super risky. Actually, there were at least 2 times during the project where I had so many problems with just SwiftUI because I couldn't do something exactly like the designer wants, for example, that I literally thought like I should have just used UI kit. It's like maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it's just like too early to do this just for one person without having like an actual people who are more knowledgeable around or even on the internet. But now actually I'm happy. I mean, it ended up real well, and it was a hell of an experience. And now that I saw the SwiftUI 2.0, I'm thinking, great, now I can just, all these hacks or whatever I did, I can replace as soon as SwiftUI 2.0 comes out. I mean, now it's in beta, it will come out in September. And I think there's not going to be any problems like migrating to it and just replacing all these hacks and whatever with proper solutions from Apple.
So that calculated risk paid off.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of developers on the internet, as I saw, take this stance. SwiftUI is great, but let's use it in a year or two. Let's start using it. So that's why a lot of people didn't even try. They just played with it, but they didn't really try using it in anything big. And they were right, but I don't know. I really like this bleeding edge approach. I did it before. I did it in Tallink with some things. Like I actually, in Tallink, like I was project lead on this web mobile booking system for Tallink for the phones, like the way you buy tickets. And we started, when I started, once again, I was coming from backend background, like Java stuff, and I started doing front end. I have very little experience, so it's like, and I was a project lead on the project where I want very knowledgeable about the technologies. So we started using like Angular, like it was Angular 1 at the time. It was quite a while ago. And at some point, I introduced to the project Elm, and I already left the project. And a year after I left the project, the guys who left there, they completely rewrote everything to Elm. It's 100% Elm. This is super cool. Like Elm is a 100% functional language. There is like no mutations whatsoever. It's pure functional language. It's amazing. It's like really hard to get into, but when you know how to use it, basically eliminates a lot of mistakes. So basically you can write less tests because of how well structured the whole thing is. Like there is little space for an error when you're using Elm.
Gotta check it out.
It's superb. It's very good. It's very good. It has also Elm has the best compilation time errors. Basically, if you experience an error, you will understand what you did wrong. It like literally explains. Probably you wanted to do this. It's like there in compilation error tells what probably you wanted to do instead of what you did. It's amazing. So basically, this was also like a little bit bleeding edge because Elm, although it existed for a few years, it was changing all the time. And it's not widely used. There is a very small community which you can turn to, although they're very helpful, but still it's not like as widespread as React.js, where you can just Google any problem you like stumble upon and you could find the solution like in, I don't know, 5 minutes. With Elm, it can be a little bit more trickier. So this was also a little bit bleeding edge. So this is what I like doing. I mean, I really like doing. It's risky, but I don't know. I never failed miserably yet.
But, when we come back to the Swift UI and the fact that you actually have now built an application in it that is going to production, how do you also contribute back to the community?
Well, I did a couple of like Stack Overflow things around SwiftUI. I didn't write any blogs over there. I was thinking about that. I think this is just something I should get into a habit of doing, I guess, because I've never done
doing
this.
it now.
Well, yeah, and it's something that would be interesting, especially because maybe what I write like there are people who are going to read it and they're actually going to say, but you could have done it like a little bit different. So you actually learn from what you are trying to teach, but you also learn from the feedback of maybe you could have done it better yourself. This is very cool. So yeah, I did a little bit of stuff, just like Stack Overflow here and there, people asking, I'm like answering. SwiftUI things that you already figured out and people still figuring it out. But I won't say it's like super big contribution. But it is like basically, I mean, I have been on Stack Overflow for years now, and they have this rating thing or whatever. And I had like before this project, my rating there was I don't know like 10 points. Now it's like over 1,000 just because of this SwiftUI things.
Okay.
Before I actually didn't have that much to contribute, but now with SwiftUI, even minor contributions are like helping someone there.
Also a topic we could talk about another time, but I'm now coming, because we are running out of time, I'd like to come back to the fact that you were the solo developer. So I'm going to ask you, what are the things that one should consider when he or she is given a chance to be a solo developer on a project?
Well, maybe think again. This is a very big thing. I think like unless, well, I guess everyone is different, but unless you're a very specific person who just doesn't like to work in a team, maybe you shouldn't do it. As a solo developer, most of the time you just learn on your own. Basically, you're like self-taught. It's basically like being a freelancer. There's no difference. You're freelancing or you are working in a company as a solo developer. So you're self-taught, and self-teaching quality is always worse than like just learning directly from some people around you who already had this experience. I worked in a very big teams before. I worked as a solo developer before. Working in a big team with people who know what they're doing is always better. So if there is a chance, always go for a team. Solo, as I said, like here in this company, there were some things which like sort of outbalanced. Like I knew I actually don't want to be solo developer that much, but in this company there were things that were so cool that I decided, okay, I'll do it. Like one of the things that I was actually allowed to use SwiftUI, because I don't think I would have found any company, especially with a team, doing a SwiftUI project a year ago, or half a year ago. And then also I just like the vision of the company. I like the product. I like the people there. I really like the CEO. I mean, he's an amazing person. It's like he literally sold me on Amper bikes after I talked to him like a couple of times. He's just like very open, has visions. He's very transparent and easy to talk to guy. And I know like where the company is going. I know what they're going to do. They're great. They are very close to their customer. They all the time like all the feedback given by people, they reply to that, even
You're
if it's
selling
like,
the company to me now. I'm like, I'm gonna have to buy the bike.
you have to. Well, yeah, it's just a cool company. I felt really excited just about the company. Just be a part of that. I mean, it's super cool to be a part of Amperpex. I never felt anything like that. I worked in several companies. I liked working in Tallink. As you said, Tallink is a big company, but never anyone actually considers it as a IT company, for example. But in fact, the Tallink's IT department is like over 100 people. It's pretty big, so it has a lot of inside IT. And also Tallink, everyone knows, it's big company, but it's not like super cool, hip company. But Amper Bikes is.
So what I take away from that is one of the reasons why you chose this path now is because you got to do something really cool, something impactful for an impactful company.
Yeah.
So you must have a reason besides this technological ambitions, if we can put it that way. Just a final question that I've tried to ask from every person I've interviewed. What are the habits that make you a better developer?
Well, like one of the things I like to do is, I don't do it all the time, but which helps me, I believe, to be a better developer is using this Pomodoro technique. basically don't just like zone in 4 hours into the code, or don't get distracted every 5 minutes. You just like work in some increments, like, I don't know, 25 minutes, and then take a break for 5 minutes and do whatever. It really helps being productive. This is one of the things definitely that increase my productivity as a developer. But overall, what makes me just in general a better developer, I would say, it's a flexibility. Like, I am actually super flexible with other people's ideas. I'm flexible with technologies. I'm flexible, well, in pretty much anything. I can, like, I've been a backend developer, I've been a front-end developer. In front-end development, I use so many technologies. I wasn't like, I know people who are like, for example, using Java, and they're like, yeah, I'll stay. Like Kotlin came, Kotlin is super popular, but no, because I used Java for years, I'm not even going to try Kotlin, because that's it. I know this is like this inflexibility. It's like there's no even real reason. I mean, if there is a real reason, good, but most of the time, inflexible people don't even have a reason, except they're just not flexible. They're like, that's it. They're going to use this one thing that they know. I don't have that. I'm actually open to anything.
Can we say also it's because you're curious to try out new things?
Yeah, it is that, but also sometimes when I'm not curious, sometimes someone tells me like, let's do like this, and I actually had some sort of maybe even dislike to this, but I say, like, what are the reasons? And if the reasons are good enough, I say like, okay, what the hell? Let's try doing that. Also, like, I all the time read something on, like, on the things like I'm interested in, like just follow all these blogs and whatever, like SwiftUI. Now basically I'm reading everything I could find on SwiftUI. I do it literally on daily basis. It's like so cool. Like, if you read a small article on something that's interesting to you, that you're using on production, you can learn a lot. It's like sometimes you read, okay, this is something you knew, useless. Sometimes you read and it's like, wow, I could have done it like that, and you actually start using it. So basically all the time, try to learn from other people, I guess. Like, if you don't have that, especially if you're a solo developer, you have to go somewhere else to get this knowledge from other people.
So also being knowledgeable.
Yeah, being knowledgeable, and being knowledgeable not only with the thing you currently work with. I remember there was this great advice. I was going to a conference. Well, I was going to a lot of conferences, and usually I went to very big ones, which had like multiple tracks. So basically, you cannot attend all the things they're having there. You had to pick like where to go, because it's like simultaneously at the same time, like 5 different things are being presented. And I, by default, like, it's like a gut thing or whatever, like, you go to the things you're now using at work, right? Because you'll probably learn something new. And one friend of mine told me, but actually go to something completely unrelated to your current work. And because it will like widen your horizon, maybe you will start using it at work. Maybe it will just give you just like a better general knowledge, because it's very good to have not like just narrow knowledge, but like general knowledge about a lot of things. It makes you just more interesting person, even or better at work, better at everything, better at just being a human. I don't know, more interesting while talking to other people, just even not work related. It doesn't matter. So, and I started doing that, and it was so cool. You just like look at these things completely unrelated to you, and you learn like interesting things. Maybe you will start using it, maybe not, but now you know like more.
I totally agree with you. Like, being open-minded, constantly looking what's out there, and also, yeah, trying out new things, being curious. It's super important for being a good developer.
Yeah, otherwise you're just like stagnating, and I don't know. For me, it's not interesting. Like, to just do the same old thing using the same old approach all the time. It's just like, it's like going to work using exactly the same way every day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting to try different routes.
Anyways, I think we're gonna wrap up here. But man, I want to thank you. I mean, there are so many other topics I like to talk about, but this discussion has already been so long. So yeah, I genuinely thank you for sharing that experience. Definitely check out Ampler Bikes if you want a new cool bike for yourself. It's the way to also contribute to a better world, because, well, you're not using your car, you're using your bike. Anyways, thank you, Pavel, and see you guys in the next video. Bye.